Chapter 2. Seed Corn. Evara kept Mara's parcel under her cloak, because food made people look twice. The rain had thinned by the time she left the low beam, but the cold had not. It slid under her scarf, and found the damp places at her collar, her cuffs, the seam at her left boot where the leather had split and been stitched with thread meant for linen. The thread would rot by first frost. She knew that as surely as she knew the pump would freeze again before morning, and the south fence would lose another post if the wind turned. Behind her, Orren's voice rose through the tavern door. Not singing, talking, that was almost worse. He had a way of making talk sound like the first notes of something, as if every room were only waiting for him to find the tune of it. Men leaned in when he spoke. Women pretended they did not. Children forgot to be shy. Even Mara, who had buried 2 husbands, and half her softness with them, kept the thickest broth for him when he looked thin enough to shame her. Evara did not look back. The lane outside the tavern was all mud and old straw. Someone had scattered ash over the worst of it, but the rain had turned the ash to grey paste that clung to her boot soles. She stepped around a rut full of black water and caught the smell of fish guts from the barrels behind the smokehouse. The gulls had not bothered with them today. That meant there was nothing left worth stealing. A woman came out of the baker's shed with a sack folded flat beneath one arm. Not empty, quite. The woman held it the way people held things they wanted others to believe were heavier. Her little girl walked beside her, chewing something slowly. Evara looked away before she could see whether it was bread, or only the inside of her cheek. At the well square, old Rusk had set a lantern on the stones, and was cutting a fish head in 2 with a knife too blunt for mercy. His grandson watched from the steps, eyes fixed on the blade. When one half slid free, the boy reached too quickly. Rusk slapped his hand. "Wait for your mother." The boy pulled back. His mouth had already begun to shine. Evara tightened her hand over the parcel beneath her cloak and walked faster. 3 houses on the lower road had no lamps lit. The first belonged to the Vale twins, who never wasted oil, but always kept a wick burning if one of them was ill. The second had belonged to a net-maker and his sister. The sister had gone south last thaw with a trader who promised wages in Camarath and came back alone with a bolt of yellow cloth no one asked about. The third house had smoke, but only from the back wall, where green wood had been stacked too close to the stove and was hissing instead of burning. Either they had no dry fuel left, or no one strong enough to fetch it. Evara did not know which answer she preferred. The road bent past the chapel stone, where the old offerings sat in a little hollow protected from weather. Someone had left 3 barley grains there. Someone else had taken 2. Evara paused long enough to look, not pray. Looking was free. The single grain sat dark against the stone, swollen from rain. It would not sprout there. It would soften, split, and feed nothing but a bird or a beetle, if beetles still had the sense to live in Skeldrun. Her father would call that waste. Orren would call it hope, and make everyone forgive the waste, because he could make the word sound warm. Evara stepped back onto the road. Past the last village house, the wind had room to gather itself. It came off the fields in a flat, hard push, carrying the smell of wet stalks and old rot. The Soln land lay beyond the low ridge, though land was a generous word for what remained. Her grandfather had called it a holding. Her father called it his blood. Evara called it field when anyone asked, and ground when no one did. The wilting stalks began before the fence. They had been corn once, in the way a sick child was still a child. Short, yellowed, leaves curled tight against themselves. The rain tapped against them and made a dry little ticking where there should have been lush rustle. Evara stepped between the rows by habit, even though the rows were broken now and not worth respecting. Her skirt caught on a stalk. She pulled too hard and snapped it. The sound made her stop. It was a small sound, nothing in it. A brittle crack under rain. Still, she stood there with the broken stalk in her hand, and felt her throat close, as if the thing had cried out. Foolish. She dropped it, near the well. The pump handle wore a skin of fresh ice. Orren had noticed her hands at the tavern. Of course he had. Orren noticed the sort of thing that could be made beautiful. Red knuckles, torn scarves, the shape of a woman standing in a doorway while everyone else clapped. He did not notice, or did not understand, what came after. Someone had to break the ice again before morning. Someone had to haul water if the pump gave it. Someone had to check whether the last hen had frozen in the coop, or only stopped laying out of spite. Someone had to count the seed corn. Warm quartz did not count seed corn. She crossed the yard, passing the empty peg where the goat's lead still hung. The rope swung in the wind. Her father had taken the goat 3 weeks ago. He said meat was meat, and no animal earned its keep by being loved. Evara had held the goat's head against her ribs while it bleated, ridiculous and warm and stupid with trust. Her father had pried her fingers away one by one. That night they ate broth, with fat floating in gold circles on top. The next morning the milk was gone from their lives. The rope kept swinging. Evara went inside. The threshold stone was warm under her boot. She stopped with one hand on the doorframe. No, not warm, less cold. There was a difference. The hearth was on the other side of the wall, and Stone remembered heat poorly, but sometimes remembered it enough. She had no patience for strange things that did not mend shoes, fill bowls, or keep men sober. She stepped in and shut the door with her shoulder. The house smelled of damp wool, smoke, boiled roots, and her father. He sat at the table with his back to the hearth, and his left hand wrapped around his cup. The cup was empty. He held it anyway. His spoon lay beside his bowl, not in it. That was good. A spoon in hand meant he was still eating. A spoon laid down too carefully meant something else. His belt hung on the peg near the bed. Also good. His boots were on. Not good. Evara crossed to the shelf and set down her basket. "You're late," he said. "The lane is mud. It rains on everyone." "Then everyone is late." His eyes lifted. She turned away before the answer could show on her face. Dry wit was safest in her head. Sometimes it slipped. Tiredness made doors in a person. She took off her cloak and hung it on the nail nearest the hearth. The cloth parcel stayed hidden in the crook of her arm until she could set it behind the flour crock. The flour crock held no flour. It had become useful for secrets instead. Her father's eyes followed the motion. "What's that? Mending? Mara pays in cloth now?" "Mara pays in needing things fixed. Didn't ask what she needs." Evara untied her scarf slowly. Her fingers wanted to hurry. Hurrying made guilt visible, whether there was guilt or not. She sent back a heel of bread, Evara said. "Half for the cuffs." The lie came out plain. A clean lie was better than a decorated one. Her father stared at the flour crock. His beard had gone uneven where he had trimmed it with the kitchen knife. Grey showed in patches. His face had been handsome once. People still said so when they wanted to be cruel kindly. The bones of it remained. Hunger had cut the rest into edges. "Charity," he said. "Payment? Women like Mara don't pay for cuffs with bread. Mara pays for what she wants mended again." His mouth twitched. Not quite a smile. Not kindness either. Always an answer. Only when asked something. The spoon moved. Just a little. His thumb against the handle. Evara went still inside, though her hands kept working. She took the pot from the hook, stirred what was left, and judged it by sound. Too thin. 1 turnip, maybe 2, softened to threads. Some barley at the bottom, if she did not scrape too hard and anger it into burning. She reached for the water jug. Empty, of course. "I'll fetch more," she said. No! The word stopped her hand. Her father looked toward the window. Rain ticked softly against the patched oiled cloth. It can wait. Water never waited. It froze, soured, spilled, vanished, or became someone else's. But she set the jug down. He picked up the spoon and tapped it once against the table. The singer was loud tonight. Evara took 2 bowls from the shelf. One had a crack wired shut. The other had no handle. She gave him the better one. Most singers are loud. This one thinks loud makes him a man. This one keeps people drinking at Mara's. Ah! Her father leaned back. The chair creaked beneath him. So you noticed. I noticed Mara keeping her door open because folk came in. Don't dress it as trade. It is trade. His hand tightened on the cup. A song doesn't feed you. No, doesn't roof you. No, doesn't plant, doesn't cut, doesn't mend a pump. No, the pot steamed between them. Steam was a mercy, because it blurred his face. He watched her ladle stew into his bowl. Yet girls hear a song and forget the weight of their own name. Evara set the ladle down before her fingers could shake broth onto the table. My name weighs the same. You think I don't see it? She gave him the bowl. See what? The door in your eyes. A splatter of rain struck the hearth through the roof leak and hissed on the stones. Evara reached for the small pot beneath it and moved it an inch to the left. The drip caught properly again. I look at the door because the latch sticks, she said. He laughed once. It had no humor in it. Your mother said things like that. The room tightened. There were subjects her father entered like a man entering a field with a torch. No good came of running. But standing still did not save the crop either. Evara took her own bowl and sat across from him. Her portion had less. She had done it without thinking. She always did. When she noticed she wanted to switch them, and could not. He would see. He would call it pity, or insult, or daughterly obedience, depending on what hurt most that night. She had answers too, he said. Evara lifted the bowl. The heat reached her lips before the taste did. Did she? His eyes sharpened. Too late. The question had slipped out before she could catch it. Not sharp. Not accusing. Worse. Hungry. Her father set down his spoon. Evara knew the sounds of him. The house had taught her. Cup meant thought. Spoon meant warning. Chair meant weather-changing. Belt meant run, if there was anywhere to run. The spoon sat between his fingers. He rolled it slowly. She had songs in her head, he said. Roads in her feet. Same as him. Evara looked into her bowl. A strip of turnip skin floated near the edge. She pressed it down with her spoon. You said she was quiet. I said she learned quiet too late. That was new, or old and only newly given. Her father's stories changed when drink or weather or memory wanted different things. Some nights her mother had died. Some nights she had left. Some nights she had been taken by kin who never sent word. Some nights she had been a faithless woman, with a pretty mouth and no stomach for duty. Evara owned no version of her, except the comb. The comb sat in a narrow box on the upper shelf, bone yellowed with age, 2 teeth missing. Her father kept it where Evara could see it, and not reach it without a stool. When she was small, she had dragged a chair over and held the comb only once. It had been lighter than she expected. Her father had found her with it, and gone silent for so long that she had wished he would shout. He had not struck her that day. He had taken the comb and put it higher. Evara did not look at the shelf now. Her father did. She left, he said, though Evara had not asked. People leave when they get to thinking songs are doors. Evara swallowed the stew. It had no salt. Maybe she only wanted air. His spoon struck the table. Not hard enough to break anything. Hard enough There it is. Evara set her bowl down carefully. There is nothing. There is always nothing when a girl starts lying. I'm not lying. No? No. He leaned forward. His breath smelled of sour ale and turnip. Not enough ale to make him clumsy. Enough to make his sadness mean. You saw him? Yes. You spoke? Yes. He asked you to leave. The room went very quiet around the question. Rain at the roof, drip in the pot, hearth coal shifting, her father's breath, her own pulse in the raw skin of her hands. No, she said. His face changed. She should have said yes. She should have said something nearer truth, because he knew the shape of a lie even when he knew nothing else. But the word had come from the old place in her body where answers formed before thought. Denial first, always. Denial gave the next breath a chance to exist. No, he said. He asked if he could walk me back. Her father's mouth twisted. To my door. To the road. And you said, no. He studied her. That part was worse than anger. He was not a stupid man. It would have been easier if he were. His cruelty had eyes. His grief had memory. He knew where to set his questions, so they caught. And did you want to say no? Ivara's fingers tightened around the bowl. A direct question was a trap, because the true answer and the safe answer were different animals. I came home, she said. His face went flat. Not anger. Not yet. Something tired beneath it. Something older than her. Aye, he said. You did. He picked up his spoon again. The sound of it in the bowl let her breathe. They ate. The stew had gone thin enough that the last bites were mostly warm water, with root threads drifting through it. Her father scraped his bowl anyway. The spoon worried every corner until clay squealed. Evara wanted to ask him to stop. Instead she rose and took the heel of bread from the parcel. Mara had given back more than half. Stupid woman. Kind woman. Stupid, kind woman. Evara cut the bread into 3 pieces. 1 for her father. 1 for mourning if she could hide it. 1 for herself if she ate quickly enough not to think. Her father watched her place the largest piece beside his bowl. He did not take it. You think I don't know what you do? Evara set the knife down. Cut bread? Make me a beggar in my own house. Her temper stirred. It had been there all day. Banked under work and wet wool and Orren's voice. Temper was dangerous, because it felt like warmth. You're eating in your own house, she said. That's the opposite. His hand flashed, not at her, at the bread. He swept the piece from the table. It struck the wall and fell near the hearth, collecting ash on one edge. Evara looked at it. So did he. For a moment, neither moved. Then his face crumpled in on itself, not into tears, but something nearer hunger. He turned away and rubbed both hands over his mouth. Leave it, he muttered. Evara did not. She crossed to the hearth, picked up the bread, brushed the ash with her thumb, and set it back on the table. Not in front of him this time, between them. His eyes followed the movement. Shame made him mean. She saw it gathering. You have your mother's hands, he said. Evara sat down. The bread lay between them, ash still caught in the torn side. She had long fingers, he said. Good for taking what wasn't hers. Evara could feel the answer in her mouth. Maybe she took herself. Maybe she was hers. Maybe you held too tight. She ate her piece of bread instead. It was stale and precious, and tasted faintly of smoke from Mara's oven. She chewed until the words went down with it. Her father did not touch his piece, not while she watched. After supper, Evara cleaned the bowls with a rag already too dirty for the work. The water jug stayed empty. The roof continued its small leaking. Her father moved to the hearth stool and stared into the coals as if they owed him speech. Evara checked the back shelf, while his eyes were on the fire. The seed pouch had been shifted, not far, half a finger's width, maybe. The leather thong faced the wrong way. She had tied it with a knot turned toward the wall, so she would know. Now the knot faced out. Her throat went dry. She lifted the pouch as if it weighed nothing. It should have weighed more, not much more, but enough. Enough for spring if spring came kindly, if the lower rows drained, if the crows found worse pickings elsewhere, if the frost broke before the seed rotted, if her father kept his hands out of it, if the gods remembered fields could not grow on songs. Too many ifs for such a small pouch. "What are you looking at?" her father asked. Evara set the pouch down. "Mouse sign. We have no grain for mice." "Then they'll be disappointed." He snorted. The sound let her hide the pouch beneath a folded cloth and close the shelf. She did not ask. If she asked, he would answer. If he answered, they would both have to stand in the knowledge that he had eaten spring. Maybe he had not. Maybe the pouch had only shifted when he reached for something else. Maybe her hand had tied the knot wrong last time. Maybe wanting a thing to be true could make it possible for one more night. She took the water jug. "I'll go before the pump freezes." "I said it can wait, and I heard you." His head turned. Evara did not move. The jug hung empty from her hand. The handle had rubbed a groove into her fingers over the years. It sat there now, familiar as an old warning. Her father's eyes went to the belt on the peg. So did hers. A coal in the hearth cracked. The sound made them both blink. It glowed, suddenly bright in the center, a small red eye opening in ash. Too bright. Then it dulled again, as if ashamed of itself. Her father looked back at the fire. "Go then," he said. Evara went. Outside, the yard had gone darker than it should have been. Clouds hid the moon. The rain had stopped, but water still fell from the eaves in steady little drops. She crossed to the pump, set the jug beneath the spout, and took the handle in both hands. The iron burned cold. She pushed. Nothing. Again. The handle moved with a groan, and the first spit of water came brown with rust. She pumped until it ran clear enough to pretend. The effort pulled at her shoulders. Her hands screamed. Halfway through, she rested her forehead against the pump and let the cold of it press the heat from her skin. From inside the house came no crash, no shout, no chair. Good. The jug filled slowly. At the edge of the yard, the goat rope stirred in the wind. Evara looked at it for too long. Then she took the full jug in both arms and carried it in. Her father had eaten the bread while she was gone. He had left the ashed corner on the table. She said nothing. Neither did he. Later, when he had taken to the bed, and his breath had thickened into the uneven sound that was not quite sleep, Evara knelt by the shelf. She moved the folded cloth, took down the seed pouch, and carried it to her pallet by the wall. The house had only 2 rooms if a person was generous. Her pallet sat behind a hanging blanket that had once been blue. Its lower edge was dark with damp where it brushed the floor. She lit no lamp. She knew the pouch by touch. 1 knot, then the second. Then the lever opened. She counted the kernels in her palm. Not allowed. Never allowed. 1 had split. 2 were soft. 1 had a black mark where rot had begun to think about entering. She set those aside. The rest were hard, cold, and yellow in the dark little teeth of a spring that had not yet agreed to exist. There were fewer. She counted again. Still fewer. Her father coughed in the other room. Evara closed her hand around the seed until the edges bit into her skin. For 1 breath, she hated him so sharply that the feeling frightened her. Then she hated herself for having room for hate when there was so little room for anything. She put the seeds back, all but the bad ones. The split kernel she held under her tongue until it softened. It tasted of dust and shame. She swallowed anyway. The other 3 she wrapped in a rag and tucked near the hearth for the hens. if the last hen survived the night. Useless for planting did not mean useless entirely. When she reached for her basket to hide the pouch beneath it, her fingers found the old blue string tied to the handle. Orren's string. It had come from his cracked sixth string after the last thaw. He had tied it there in the market because she had 3 baskets that looked alike, and he said a woman with 3 identical baskets was inviting tragedy, or worse, inconvenience. She had told him the string was foolish. He had told her foolish things were easier to find in the dark. She had meant to cut it off several times. Now she sat on the pallet with the seed pouch in one hand and the useless blue string under her thumb. From the other room, her father shifted in the bed. The old boards answered beneath him. Evara slid the seed pouch under her mattress, where the straw had thinned. Then she worked the blue string loose from the basket handle. It came away frayed and stubborn, leaving a pale mark on the wicker where it had been. She should have thrown it into the hearth. Instead, she tucked it beside the seed corn. Both were useless tonight. She kept both anyway.
Rain on the sill, salt in the flame. When the door goes quiet and the room lets go, lay the last word gently where the dark runs slow.
There is still a road under ash, under rain. There is still a voice trying not to break. Carry the song through the dark and the foam. Carry the name when the cold calls home. Leave one small